All right, let's jump right in. We are going to talk about one of the most powerful mental models out there for navigating this, chaotic and totally unpredictable world we live in. It's this one single idea that once you really get it, it changes how you look at pretty much everything, from your health to your career, all the way up to the global economy.
So here's the central puzzle, isn't it? We spend so much time and so much energy trying to make our lives safer, more predictable, more orderly. And yet, it feels like our big systems, banking, healthcare, you name it, are more fragile and more vulnerable to just completely collapsing than ever before. So what's going on?
Well, here's the big reveal. The core idea from Nassim Taleb. He says that the very things we try to get rid of, stress, randomness, a little bit of chaos, are actually what make complex systems strong. By trying to create this perfect, sterile order, we've actually been making ourselves weaker.
Taleb actually has a name for this. He calls it the privation of antifragility. And the best way to think about it is like muscle atrophy. If you just lie in bed for a month without moving, your muscles get weak. Well, by shielding our big systems from small, everyday stressors, we've basically done the exact same thing just on a massive scale. We've made them fragile and totally prone to catastrophic failure. So what's the answer? Well, it's not just about being tougher or more resilient. It's not about being robust. It's about tapping into a completely different way of being, something that actually gets better from chaos. And this is the first huge mental shift you have to make. If I ask you what's the opposite of fragile, say a fragile teacup, most of us would say something like robust, right? Maybe a steel box. But think about it. A steel box just resists getting hit. It doesn't benefit from it. The true opposite would be something that actually gets stronger every time you hit it. Taleb uses this brilliant analogy. For centuries, this fundamental concept was just hidden in plain sight because we didn't have a word for it. It's kind of like how the ancient Greeks didn't have a word for the color blue. They could see the ocean, of course, but they described it as wine dark. Antifragility is the same thing. It's this core property of anything that survived for a long time, and we've just been blind to it. So here it is, the definition. Antifragile things don't just survive shocks and chaos, they feed on them. They get better, they get stronger, they get more capable because they've been exposed to stressors and mistakes. Your immune system is the perfect example, right? Exposure to a few germs makes it stronger, not weaker. That's antifragility in action.
This all boils down to Taleb's core framework, which he calls the triad. On one end, you have the fragile. Think of the sword of Damocles, one little stress and it's all over. In the middle, you have the robust, like the phoenix. It can take a hit and come back the same. But on the far end, you have the anti-fragile, like the hydra. You cut off one head, two grow back stronger. It literally gains from harm. You can see this everywhere. A fragile centralized banking system versus the anti-fragile fail-fast culture of Silicon Valley, which actually thrives on lots of small failures.
Okay, so this is all great in theory, but how do we actually use this idea? Well, Taleb points us to two amazing guides, one from ancient myth and one from a Stoic philosopher. First, the Hydra. It's just the perfect image for this entire concept, isn't it? It literally profits from being damaged. And that's the goal here, not to avoid getting your heads cut off, but to build a life or a system where that very experience makes you way more formidable.
But on the flip side, we have this character that Taleb calls the fragilista. This is the so-called expert, the planner, the risk manager, who thinks they can predict and control everything in a complex world. They build these super complicated models that, ironically, end up making us all much more vulnerable.
And this is the Fragilista's anthem. After the 2008 financial crisis completely blew up the world economy, this was the excuse from Alan Greenspan, the former head of the U.S. Federal Reserve. The fragile mindset just can't grasp that the worst thing that ever happened was, by definition, something that had never happened before.
And that really gets to the core difference. A fragile, man-made system like the Fukushima nuclear reactor is built to withstand the worst earthquake on record. But nature, which is the ultimate anti-fragile engineer, it works completely differently. It builds systems assuming something way, way worse is always just around the corner. And it builds an overcompensation to prepare for it.
So how do we actually put this into practice? What's the strategy? For that, we turn to the ancient Stoic philosopher Seneca. He was a master at living with uncertainty, and his approach looks a lot like a barbell.
So the barbell strategy is all about avoiding that dangerous, mushy middle of medium risk. Instead, what you do is you put the huge majority of your resources, let's say 90%, into things that are extremely safe, hyper-conservative. And then you take the remaining 10% and you expose it to wild, speculative, high-reward risks. A great example is the novelist Stendhal. He had a boring, safe government job, which gave him the financial security to take massive artistic risks in his writing.
Okay, so beyond that barbell strategy, becoming more anti-fragile means we have to completely change our relationship with two things: mistakes and complexity.
This is a huge one. For a fragile person or a fragile system, an error is a disaster. But for the anti-fragile, a small, non-lethal mistake is a gift. It's pure information. It's a free lesson about what doesn't work, and that lesson makes the whole system stronger.
Just look at the difference between the airline industry and the banking industry. When a plane crashes, which is thankfully very rare, the entire global system learns from that single error and flying gets safer for everyone. That system is anti-fragile. But when a bank fails, the risk of other banks failing actually goes up. The error spreads like a disease. That system is incredibly fragile.
All right, now for a beautifully simple but totally counterintuitive idea. Most of us think that to improve something, you have to add something, a new rule, a new piece of tech, a new process. But Taleb argues that real wisdom, real robustness, often comes from subtraction. He calls it the via negativa, the negative way.
And you know who understood this perfectly? Steve Jobs. Real progress, whether it's in technology or in your own life, often comes not from what you add, but from what you take away. Removing bad habits, removing harmful foods from your diet, removing bad ideas. It's all about getting rid of the stuff that makes you fragile.
So when you put all these pieces together, the triad, the barbell strategy, learning to love small errors, and this idea of via negativa, it's way more than just a strategy. It really becomes a whole new way of seeing the world.
On one side, you have the fragile mindset. It's obsessed with trying to predict the future. It craves certainty. It hates chaos, and it relies on these rigid top-down plans. But the anti-fragile mindset, it doesn't even try to predict. Instead, it looks for options and opportunities. It embraces stressors as valuable information. And it learns from tinkering, from trial and error, from the bottom up. And this, right here, is the ultimate freedom that the anti-fragile mindset gives you. You get to stop trying to do the impossible, which is predicting the future. Instead, you focus on building a life and building systems that are so well structured they don't need to predict the future. You set things up so that you actually benefit from uncertainty, no matter what it throws at you.
So I'll leave you with this question to chew on. In our constant search for safety and stability, what are we overprotecting? What parts of our career, our health, or even our relationships are we shielding from all stress so much that we are in fact making them fatally fragile?